This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so now if you want to call a method outside the class, what's the first step we do?
New.
New what?
Create another reference, like a new reference.
Yes, new reference of what?
Class.
Of the class, products. Okay. What next? How do I call the order method? Just like variables. Okay, so what do we do?
Order.p1.
Order.p1.
P1
Event dot order. Okay, so that's what we do, just like how we call variables, right? If you want to access these variables, we say p1 dot stock, p1 dot name. For methods, we would say p1 dot order, p1 dot st order, and so on. Okay, now this is what you guys need to pay attention on. When you call a method, you need to remember the order of the input. Okay, so what I mean is, if the order method requires one integer parameter and one string parameter, you're supposed to send one integer and one string. Okay, now tell me, what are the values of primitive data type or string? What kind of values can you send? What kind of values a primitive data type or string object can hold?
Primitive.
0 1
Literal values. Okay, primitive data type and string can hold literal values. Okay, as we saw in the first class, simple data types are primitive and string. They all have literal values. Okay, whereas object classes have references. Okay, objects have references and primitive and string has literal values. Okay, if you want a variable of integer, you do more like this. Okay, you have literal values for variables, whereas for objects like product, right, it's a reference, it's a product reference variable. For them, we need to create objects like this. Okay, so for primitive data type and for string, you can have literal values. Okay, these are literal value. If you remember, if you notice, literal values are those where you do not use the new operator to create a value. Okay, new is not used when you have literal values. Okay, for everything else, for product, student, okay, anything other than primitive or string requires the new operator to create an object. Okay, so for literal and string, we don't. Now, this is what you can do. So remember one thing what we discussed yesterday. If a method has to return integer, what are our options? If you have to send back an integer value, what are our options for a primitive?
We can do int and then variable name. Maybe a equals to and assign a value. Or return the variable name a.
Yes, very good. This is one. And what's the other?
For the object?
For primitive.
Return the value directly, like return 10.
Return literal value.
Literal value.
Okay, return a literal value, literal integer value. Okay, those are our options. We have two options. If a method has to return integer, you can return a literal value, or you can have a variable which is of same type. Okay, return for primitive or string. I wrote it right here. If you want to return something from for a primitive or a string, you can return a literal value or a variable of same type. Okay, variable of same type, int a, int. If the return type is not primitive or string, you have to return the reference variable of same type. This s is a reference variable of same type. What is the type of s? Student. And what are we supposed to output? Student. They both match. Okay, they both match. So we can send the reference variable s. Okay, everyone followed that, right? Whatever we discussed yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the same rule applies when you're sending. This was all about returning, right? Now in this context, in the two programs that you have, testing and product, who is the sender? Who is sending information? Who is the sender and who is the receiver?
Testing sender.
From testing, we are going to send values, and the product method order is going to receive values. Testing is sender and product is receiver. Testing is caller. Testing is calling method. That's how we call it technically. Okay. The more technical term is, in line number 6, we are calling the order method. So when you're calling, you're sending information. Okay, and the other party will send you back response, return response. So this is the sender and this is the receiver. Okay, when you're sending information here. Now the sender or the caller has to send information in the same logic as what we did here. The first input is integer, so you have two options. You can either send literal values or a variable of same type. Okay, so look at this now. What we did is this method, okay, the order method requires one integer and one string. So is 10 a literal value of integer?
Yes.
Is John a literal value of string?
Yeah.
Yes. So they are both okay. You can pass literal values or you can pass a variable. Okay, this is one option. The other option is you can create variable. Okay, just like what you did in the return type, the same logic applies. Okay, you can say p1.order a comma name. The order is still same. The first input we are passing is a, which is of type integer. So the first variable is integer. Second variable is string. Are we in the same order, integer and string? Yes. Okay. So what you need to remember is you have to send the input in the same order and same type. If it requires first integer, second string, you can pass integer literal value and string literal value, or an integer variable and a string variable. Okay, you can pass either one of them. If you change this order, it will not compile. Okay, this will not work. The order has to be the same. Okay, if you swap any of these things, you'll have error. Okay, and if you notice, Eclipse is really helpful. Okay, it will tell you everything you need to know. So what does the error message say? the method order requires integer and string. It is not applicable for arguments, string, and integer. It is trying to tell you everything. In fact, it is giving you quick fixes. Swap arguments. Okay, Eclipse will help you out in everything, but you have to understand what that message means. Okay, it requires integer and string. The method order requires integer and string, and it is not applicable for arguments, string and int, which you are doing here, string and int. So does everyone follow how to pass input? Any questions in this?
No.
Okay, so there are three distinct steps to call another method. Okay, one is to access the method. Okay, meaning if you want to call or invoke order method, how do we do that? Okay, so there are two steps. If you're outside the class, you need a reference to that class first. Okay, connection to that class. Once you have a connection to that class, you can use the dot operator and call the method. Okay, that's the first part. If you're in the same class, how do you call the order method? If I want to call the other method order from this st order method, how do I call?
Just use order.
Direct. Okay, no reference needed. Both the methods are in the same class. They are local. They're easily accessible. Okay, you can easily access them locally. Okay, you don't need any references or anything. Those are the two distinct ways you can call a method. Okay, so to access a method from outside class, what is the step?
Create an object of the other class. Okay.
Create reference of other class.
And then using dot operator.
Yes, and using dot operator.
We ask information with that class.
Right, you access the method using dot operator. Okay. From inside the class,
Direct access.
you call the method directly with its name. Okay, no reference is required. Okay, does everyone follow this two step? How to call methods from within and outside the class?
Yes.
Now passing the input. This applies to both inside the class, outside the class. Okay, it doesn't matter where you're calling from. Okay, see here, if you're calling within the same class or outside this class, either way you have to follow the same rule. Okay, you can either pass literal values, okay, or you can pass variable that matches the same type. Okay, either way you have to follow that rule within or outside. Okay, it doesn't matter where you're calling this from, within the class or outside the class, you have to follow that rules. Okay, if the parameters are primitive or string, you have two choices. You can pass either literal values Anywhere you access from, you can pass literal values, or you can pass a variable of same type, integer a, string name. First is integer, second is string. First is integer, second is string. X, Y. X, first one is integer. Y, second one is string. So that rule applies no matter where you call from. Okay. So for passing input, it doesn't matter where you call from. Okay, you have to follow the same order of type. Whenever I say type, I'm saying what data type it is. Okay, data type as in, is it integer, is it string, is it student, is it product? Okay, the number of inputs should match. Number of input should match. Now if product method order requires quantity and string, you cannot pass just one. If it requires two parameters, integer and string, you are supposed to pass two parameters, integer and string, in the same order. Okay, you need to have same number of input passed and in the same order. Okay, the number of inputs should match. If it requires two, you need to pass two. The type of the input should match. If it requires int and then string, you have to pass int and string. Order of the input should also match. If the first one is input, second is string, you have to pass first as input, second as string. Okay, int and string. So the number of input, type of the input, and order of the input, they all should match. Does everyone follow on the pass on the input?
Yes.
Now, okay, let's look at how do we process the output. Now the customer is interested in knowing the price of the product. Okay, customer wants to know what's the price of this product. Okay, what's the price of this iPhone product? Okay, now so what the customer program does is it will say, it will create a reference, since the method get price is outside the customer program. Okay, it will create a reference to the product class. Once it does that, it will call the get price method. Now when you call the get price, what did the product class return you?
100.
It returned you 100. But does the customer know what value was returned from the product class? Is there any way to know?
No.
So that's what we call processing the output. Okay, processing the output is a step where you basically prepare for whatever is coming from the other side. So what will be returned from this sender?
100.
100.
What data type?
Integer.
Integer.
So this is what you do. Okay. Now, whenever you come across the equal sign, you have right hand side, left hand side. Okay, you have some code here and some code here. Okay. Now, which one will be processed first?
Right hand side.
Right hand
Right
side.
hand side.
The right hand side will be processed. Okay, so the moment you go to the right hand side, you say get price. Where does the control go?
Left hand side.
Good.
Goes to the product program.
Product.
Okay, when you say get price, the control jumps from here to here. Okay, then you start processing everything here, and when you get the result back, that result, that output you got from this method call is sent to the left hand side. So what's the value in price variable right now?
100.
100.
100.
Okay, whatever information this was sending, this program received it because you stored it in your variable, in your local variable. You have to catch them. Now remember, I'm just repeating myself over and over. Okay, so this applies, this rule applies everywhere. If this method returns integer, what can you store that information in? Integer.
Integer.
Okay, if this method requires integer as the first parameter, what can you send them?
Integer.
Integer. So that rule should be no-brainer. Anytime you deal with methods or references, this type should always match. Okay, imagine you pay for iPhone and I give you some Motorola old model. Will you be happy?
No.
No.
No. If you paid for iPhone, don't you deserve iPhone?
Yes.
Yes.
So that is true in the real world. If you pay for a Ferrari, you won't settle down for a Honda car. Okay, if you're expecting a Ferrari car, you need a Ferrari car. You won't be happy with anything other than that. The same rule applies here. A get price method, you are expecting to accept an integer. You are expecting them to tell you the price. And if you don't get that, basically the program will fail. Okay, if I write string, what will happen? The program won't be happy because the price method, the get price method promised it's going to return int. How can you store that in a string? So the whole concept of that integer requires integer, string requires string, that applies everywhere. Okay, if the method is supposed to return integer, you have to return integer, a variable or the literal value. If the method receives integer and string, you're supposed to send integer and string. If the method returns integer, you're supposed to store that in
String. Oh, integer.
integer. If it was string, you'd get an error. So that should apply everywhere. Integer, if something requires integer, you have to give them integer. Okay, that should be like the very basic stuff. Even here, can I assign a string value to an integer?
No.
No. No.
No.
This was a simple line that everyone understood when we were learning variables. Okay, how to declare them. If this is not true, if this is not supported, how can anything else be supported? You cannot have a string value to an integer. The same rule applies everywhere. Return integer, store in integer. Requires integer and string, you send integer and string. So that rule should apply everywhere. Assigning values, passing input, processing output, it should apply everywhere. Okay. the local variable type. Okay, this is a local variable. It is local to this program. Okay, the local variable type should match the return type. Okay, so for get price, what is the return type?
100 or integer.
So the local variable should also be integer. Okay, that's as simple as that. Okay, so these are the only simple rules you need to remember when you want to call a method. If you want to access method outside class, inside class, there are some differences. For passing input and processing output, there is no difference no matter where you call from. Okay. All right, Manish.
Yes, sir.
Call the method one from this line. Okay, just follow these steps and you'll figure it out.
So you need to create a class.
What do we
This is
create first?
inside, right?
Yeah, I need to call the method one from this line.
Okay. So this is inside, right? This is not outside class.
Are they
So
two different classes?
there are two different classes.
So is the method
So
one outside the class or inside the class two?
it's outside the class.
So it's an outside class. So what do you
Yeah.
do?
You need to create a class.
You need to create
a
reference.
reference.
Yes, reference.
Yeah.
Reference of what?
Student of the class.
Okay, this should be easier. Okay, if you just read it out, wouldn't that be easier? Create reference of other class. So what do I write here?
You need to reference the other class, class 1.
Okay, how do we write it? Okay, you guys, everything is written here. That would be cheating, right? So at least tell me the exact lines that I have to write here. Okay.
Okay, class 1.
Very good.
Student.
Student.
Yeah, student.
Where is student? Okay.
In is equal to using then a new dot student.
Class 1 student equals new student, is it?
New student method 1.
New student. Amar. Manish, understand what do I mean by creating reference of another class? Amar.
Public void.
You want me to write public void?
No. Student. Sorry, class C1. Class C is equal to new class. Not C1, class C. Sorry. Bracket. Class C. Bracket.
So what reference did you create for?
For class.
What's the name of that class?
That should be C, not C1. Oh, yeah.
Okay, you created reference for what?
We have to create reference for method.
Is there any program called class?
No.
No.
What is the name of that program?
Student.
We need.
Can you guys read it now?
Class 1.
It is class 1.
Yes.
Okay, Anusha, what next?
This conference will now be recorded.
Now, first tell me what is the return type?
Here we haven't declared return type.
Okay, return type applies to what?
Return type applies to the variables, like it should be before the method name.
Okay, so what is before the method name?
Here's the void, and
okay, I'm checking on method 1, isn't it? We are discussing the
yes.
output processing of method 1. So why would you be worried about this?
Okay. It says C dot.
So the return type of method 1 is what? The return type of method 1 is, you said it yourself, return type comes before the method name, right?
Yeah.
So if method 1 is the method name, what comes before that?
C dot. This
is the method. This is the method name.
Okay. There's a string student, then like there's a
student is the return type. Okay. So return type is student.
Student.
Now the local variable I'm referring to is to create a variable in this program, in this somewhere here. I want to create a variable. Okay, that type should match the return type. So you know what the return type is, don't you?
Yeah,
Yes.
student is the return type.
Student is the return type. Now you have to create a local variable of the
Okay,
same
yes.
type.
Yeah.
So what do we do? This is a local variable here. And what is the type? What is the type?
Type is student.
And what is the return type of method 1?
Student.
Say student.
So does that match?
Yeah, return type match here, student.
So did we do what we wrote here?
Okay, yes. It's matching the return type to different class.
Ashmita?
Yes.
Okay, so how do I complete this method?
So we should follow the
We just went through that, right?
yeah. Create a reference.
What do I write? Okay, tell me what is the return type in method 1?
The string.
It's a string. So if you're supposed to return string, what do you write inside the method?
Return string.
So what do I write? Return.
We can write the like integer a, or we can write direct return string.
Really? If the return type is string, what do I write here? What are the two options you have?
To write the variables.
So how do you write the variable?
A or
A. So what is the data type of A?
integer.
And what are you going to return? Think about it, right? So if the return type is string, how can you return a variable which is int?
Yes,
Didn't we go through all that?
it should match the.
It should match, right? So does it match? What is the data type of A? Isn't it int?
Yes.
And what is the return type you are expecting? String, right? So is string similar to int?
No.
So Adil. Adil. Adil, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
How many class members are there?
Class members.
Amar. Counting shouldn't take much time. Okay, it shouldn't take this time. Anusha.
Two.
Ashmita.
3.
Bhakta.
3.
Shabani.
5.
There are 5. Class members are variables, the global variables, and methods. So Luna. So
Yes.
rest of you, did you follow what is class member? Adil, Amar, Anusha, everyone?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So Luna. Which variable global? Okay, so I will get to that point later, global and local. But when I say global, I'm referring to the variables that you see outside the method. Okay, so there are some variables here as well, int a, int b, all that. When I say global, I'm referring to these ones, int a, string s, student. Okay. All right, so Luna, how many methods are just, how many variables are just declared?
In this one, how many variables are declared? Method int 1, 2, 3, 4. John.
3 variable are declared.
3 are declared. I meant just declared.
Just declare true. Int A and student S2 and string S is initialized.
Very good. So did you guys follow what she said? Do you have any value associated with this? Is there any values associated here?
No.
No.
Does S have a value assigned?
Yes.
Yes.
So declared are two. Just declared. Declared meaning you know that there is a variable called A, but do you have any value for A or a student, STU? You don't. Initialized is one. Initialized meaning you have an initial value. You have a value associated with you initially. This is initialized. It has a value associated with the variable S. These two do not have it. Do you understand what is declared and initialized?
Yes.
DK.
Yes, sir.
How many reference variables we have?
The reference variable. It's only one, student STU.
Kajal,
Yes, sir.
how many reference variables we have?
One.
Manish, everyone will get the turn. Manish,
Yes.
how many reference variables we have?
One. There's reference? I don't see any reference. No reference.
Mohan,
Yes, sir.
how many reference variables we have?
I didn't see any reference.
That's the whole point of this exercise. So you guys understand these technical terms. So you don't know what a reference variable is. Rupesh.
There are two.
What are they?
There are two.
Very good. What are they?
String and student STU.
String and student.
Yeah.
Sabuj.
Yes, sir.
How many primitive variables are there?
Just one. Just one.
That's one. Very good. And which one is it?
It's the int. It's the int int.
Int A.
Yes, sir.
There is one primitive and two references. It gets easier when you guys use Eclipse. Okay, it is highlighting for int. It's not highlighted. These are two references. Okay, string is a reference. It's not highlighted. Int, however, is primitive. It is highlighted. Do you understand what's a primitive and a reference variable now, Mohan? How
Yes,
to
sir.
identify them?
Yes, sir.
Saligram?
Yes, sir.
How many variables can have literal values in this program?
Strings and the integer.
Very good. There is no new operator here. String can have literal values, and so does
Integer.
We don't write new int. We just give literally a value. Literally a value. So literal values can be in this program are 2. Type.
Yes, I'm here.
Tell me all the names of parameters in the test program.
There is integer A, integer B.
Very good.
And string C.
B and C. Okay,
Yes.
so there are 4 parameters in this class, 2 for each of the method. This is what we call parameters. Does everyone understand that? What's a parameter?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Input.
Who is user? There's someone joined called user. Who is it? Okay, you guys have to write your name, display your name properly. Okay, I want to understand who I'm talking to. All right, Valerie.
Yes.
What is the return type, or else how many return types do we have in this class?
Or 10?
How many?
10?
10. That's not the return type, it's a return value.
Okay.
Vardha.
Boss, I'm user. I just
Only one. What's your name?
my name is Rohil. It's my first class.
Okay. Okay, make sure when you join, you have your proper name displayed.
Yeah, sure. And that's my first class. Sorry about that.
No problem. All right, Vardha, you there?
Yes, sir. 1 minute. Right now, I understand what's going on. Yes, sir.
So how many return types we have in the above program?
Two.
What are they?
Integer.
And
Actually, I guess we can put and string s, like A and S. Like we can return an integer and a string.
where can we return integer and string?
In the method.
We just have one.
Which method are we talking about?
The method 2. Okay, in the method 2, we're returning an integer, which is 10.
So there is no string.
Yeah, there is no string.
So in total, how many return types we have in this program?
3.
Only one.
What are they? 3 of them?
Sorry, 1. Yeah. No, there's only 1. You're returning 10, so it's an integer. Sorry. Integer.
What about method 1?
Method 1 is also returning an integer. It could be A or B.
Okay, so you don't understand the difference between parameters and return types. Okay, this is not what we call return types. Where does the return type come in?
Oh, it's void. Yeah, nothing is returning.
Okay, so don't confuse parameters with return type.
Yeah, it's void, so nothing is returning. Yes.
So return types meaning look for the one before the method. If you see void, it means no return type. You don't want to return anything. Do you see me writing anything here? Did I say anything written?
No.
I didn't write it because it is void. Void meaning you are not expecting any return. So there is only one return type which belongs to method 2, and it is of type int.
Sure.
Okay, so when we are doing this training, okay, I can't keep saying look at variable s, look at this line number, look at that line number. Okay, that will make this training like 1 year, and hence I ask you guys to catch up on the technical term. Okay, it makes it easier, it makes it more relatable. Okay, so now and then whenever we make these sessions, you have to catch up on all the technical terms. If you guys cannot remember what a class member is, what do you mean by declared, what do you mean by initialized, reference variable, primitive, literal values, parameters, return type. If you cannot differentiate what I am saying in this sentence, okay, if you confuse with return type as this or this, how will you understand my one sentence? So Adil, Adil.
Yes.
Where are we calling methods?
Okay, this is my first class. I'm trying just to catch up, so.
Okay. Amar?
Yes, sir.
Where are we calling a method? Anusha?
In ABC.
Very good. What's the line number?
16.
Perfect. That's one. Ashmita, what's the other one?
The reference one, the line 15.
Line 15 is creating reference. It's not a method call.
Okay.
Can I?
Bhakta?
It's line 10 return.
Which line?
Line 10.
I'm not able to hear you.
Line 10 return value.
Line 10. So this is a method call.
Line.
It's a line number 9. Method 1.
Very good. Line number 9. Okay. So there are two ways you can call method. One from inside the same class or outside the class. Here we are calling another method by creating reference and using the dot operator. This is one place we are calling method 2. In method 2, if you notice, we are calling method 1, aren't we? Did we have to create a reference here?
No.
No, same class.
No.
It's in the same class. So how many places are we calling methods?
2.
2.
2 of them. One in line 16, outside the class, we are calling method 2. Another in line number 9, we are calling method 1. So for this, the technical term we use is method call or accessing method. We are accessing the other method or we are calling the other method. That's the technical term we use. Luna?
Yes, sir.
Tell me the line number where you find return statements.
Where we find the return statement?
Mm-hmm.
It's the line 10 where we say return.
Yes, as simple as that. Okay, return statement is the line where you find the name, the word return, the keyword return. Shrestha?
Yes, sir.
In line number 16, what kind of input are we passing?
Int and string.
Okay. And what kind of values are they?
Literal value.
Very good. They are literal values. 19, double quote, string. They are literal values. So do you guys understand what I'm really trying to do here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. When I'm explaining a concept here on, I have to rely on these things. Okay, I will be phrasing my sentence with a combination of these technical terms. Okay, when I explain you what a return, how to call a method, I'll be using create references, initialize them, pass parameters, handle return type. I will be phrasing my sentence with these technical terms. These are the basics, and these are the ones we went through in the previous class. Okay, if you don't catch up on that, my entire sentence will make no sense to you guys. So you have to understand these technical terms. Whenever we come across a new term, you have to understand what that means. Get familiar with that. The next day, I will be adding more words to my dictionary here. From the next class, I'll be using terms like calling method, accessing method, processing output, passing input. I will be using the terms that we learned today in tomorrow's class. So if you don't catch up on that, it don't make any sense, whatever I'm saying. So it's not just about understanding the concept, you guys have to catch up on the terms, technical terms as well. Manish?
Yes, sir.
What is the data type of S variable?
String?
Yes. And what is the value of S variable?
John?
John. This is the value. And the data type of S is string. Rupesh?
Yes.
Let's say. What is the default value of student variable STU?
Default values. Reference?
Sabuj?
Reference.
Yes, sir. Can you speak once again?
What is the default value of student variable STU?
It's not.
It's null. For reference variables, default values are null. Vardha,
Yes.
what's the default value of integer A?
There is no default value.
There is no value, so we have a default value associated with that.
Oh, a null value. No, sorry. It's 0 or 1. For string, it's null, but it's integer. It's
Is it null or 0 or 1?
It's 1. It's an integer. So probably 0.
Amar?
Null.
Anusha?
0.
Ashmita?
That be 0.
Yes, that is 0.
0.
For primitive data type, integer, byte, long, they have 0. For float, double, 0.0. A fraction number.
This conference will now be recorded.
So which line are we processing output?
Line number T.
Line number?
10.
3.
No, 10.
10. 10.
10.
So we just went through this. What is this line called?
Output. No, it's returning the value.
It's right here in front of you. It was the most recent that we did, return statement. That's not processing output. Any other guess?
Line number 16.
Yes. Whatever is written from this method 2, it is being processed here. It returned 10, so that value came here and it is being processed here. Processing output, line number 16. Which lines are we passing input?
Line number 8.
5 and 8. Oh no, only 8.
Any other guess?
9 and 16.
Yes. You're passing input here
And
here. Basically, wherever you do method call, if you're passing any values here, those are the passing input lines. Method 1 is passing 10 and 20. Here, we are passing 19 and this string to method 2. How many methods, how many lines are we passing input to? Which lines are we passing input?
Line number 16.
Yes. Only here we are passing inputs. Method 1 didn't require any input. No input required, you didn't pass anything.
Yes.
What are the line numbers of method declaration?
5 and 8.
5?
5 and 8, method 1 and 2.
5 and 8. Anyone else?
Three.
Which ones?
Method.
14.
Number 3.
3.
9.
5, 8, and 14.
Yes. Isn't this a method as well?
Yes.
So the method declaration is the line which basically explains how we can access that. It is called method 2. It will return integer. It takes one integer, one string. This is the line where we call method declaration. This is where we declare the method. Method signature is the same thing. Method declaration and method signature, they both are same. Sometimes they call either one of them. Okay, method signature means the line where you declare the details about your interface, about your method. Method definition.
Maybe the same thing.
So what line number?
5, 8, and 14.
They're not the same thing. Another hint.
Three.
3. Now tell me the line numbers.
It's method body, maybe the 9 and 10
yes.
In the method 2, and the method on method ABC, there will be the 15 and 16.
Very good. So if this is method declaration, this would be your method definition. The bracket that immediately starts after the method and ends here. Starts here, ends here. Starts here, ends here. This is what we call method body or method definition. This is where you write the logic, the code. Method definition or method body. Is that clear? Do you understand what a method definition or method body is?
Yes.
Yes.
Class body?
Class body with everything after the curly braces of test and up to line number 18.
True. Number one.
Yeah, after
Up to
inside.
line number 11. Up to line number 11, and then after line number 14 to 17.
Class body is as soon as you declare the class, this is where you declare the class. Just like method, okay, you declare the class here. The bracket that immediately follows all the way till the end, you can see that highlighted here, blue and blue. So that is the method, that is a class body of test. And this is the class body of customer. You can do that even in Eclipse. If you click here, you see this highlighted. You click here, it shows you where it ends. This is the class body. This is the method body. Class body and method body. You click here, it shows you what is the coverage. You double click, it shows you the coverage, where it begins, where it ends. Class body, method body. Class body, method body. You guys follow?
Yes.
Yes.
Again, the same rule applies. You can say class definition or class body. Either one is fine. Just like what we did for method. Method definition, method body. It's the same as class definition, class body. Wherever the curly bracket begins, immediately after the method or after the class. Two to 11. 14 to 17. What else you guys didn't practice yet? See, these are just a few, okay, from 3 classes we had previously. And this will keep adding up. Every day we do something, we'll add up more to your vocabulary. And you have to keep up with that. Okay, in the last 4 classes, we caught up on these many technical terms. And we'll be using this in all the next classes until you guys get used to this thing. All the things, how didn't